This is The Right Approach. I'm JW Judge, and with me is my co-host Barbara Hinske. This is the podcast for writers to learn more about the craft and business of writing. And I was going to say as we explore a new topic every week, but this is going to be our finale. We have decided to sunset the podcast. So for the last year and a half, we've explored a new topic every week. But I don't guess we'll be doing that going forward.
Right. Well, all good things must come to an end.
Yeah, and that's part of what I want to talk about today is, what your ideas and ambitions were when we launched into this in September of 2022 and what was realized from that or different from that. And so maybe if you just want to start there, what were your expectations coming in and what did you get out of it? And maybe those were the same and maybe those were different.
That's interesting. 2022, we were coming out of COVID and everything was just, and I left my law practice to write full time shortly before COVID hit. So I felt like I never hit any kind of a normal stride in my life again. And I missed being with other professionals. And, now my new group was writers. So it gave me an opportunity to hang out with you and other writers, which was a lot of fun. We started our podcast with a huge bang with Scott Turow and, you know, other really, David Ellis, a lot of really big authors. So that was awful fun to be rubbing those shoulders. And I think I've learned so much, which is what I really wanted to do. And now we'll talk about this later, but so I've loved every podcast. I've loved every guest. It's been fun. We've had a good time together. We've developed a friendship, and that's been very gratifying. But we'll talk about it later. But in addition to writing books, I've now got a new passion project that, to be realistic, I need to pump more and more time into. So we'll get into that. But so how about you when you started it? Because this was your second podcast, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had my first podcast I'd run from March of 2020 to the end of August, I think, or sometime in August of 2022, and then started this one right on its heels with you. And I also wanted community and to meet other authors because I know I probably talked it to death on here, but my lack of time, um, you know, to go to events or conferences and be out there meeting people limited the capacity in which I can meet other writers. And so this gave me an avenue to do that and to have conversations about writing and creativity and the business of writing because, you know, what I was doing fine even before this was was the creating part. I think when we started, I'm trying to remember everything. My third novel came out in 2022, maybe. I don't know. All the time runs together.
It does.
And then shortly after that, I came out with a nonfiction book about writing. And so those were my fifth and sixth books. And so I was doing the writing part, but I was having difficulty with the selling part, which, you know, when you
Mhm.
want to run a writing business, the selling part's really important. And so, not that that's gotten any easier, uh, but I have resources and, ideas now that I wouldn't have had absent this podcast. And
I think
so,
that's exactly right.
yeah, and where that's brought, you know, here we are a little over a year and a half later, and both of us have things we want to do. We have a lot of things that are fighting for our time, and time is finite.
Yeah.
And so, we kind of collectively, when I approached you about it, had the same idea that we thoroughly enjoyed this, but at the same time, we have other things that we're working toward now. Yours is a much more selfless endeavor, while while mine is, I've got. I think I've been talking about it for the better part of the last 10 months about how extraordinarily busy my law practice has been, and that has been even more unrelenting over the last 4 months, where I'm working 50 hours a week, and that hasn't let up. Although I think I might be on the cusp of it right now as I look at the next couple of months. No, I say that as I had to
Hope so.
make hotel arrangements and flight arrangements just this morning. So maybe it's not letting up. We'll see. But in addition to that, I've got young kids, and right now we're in the middle of baseball season and ballet and gymnastics, and summer camps coming up. And I've also decided I've gotten back into running, which I had not really done sustainably over the last 10 years. But before we had kids, I've ran several half marathons and always had an ambition to run marathons, but kept getting hurt. It just kept getting overuse injuries every time I got to the before I could ever really run a marathon. So I've decided to give that another go. I'm in my early 40s. Now is the time really to get back into that if I'm going to do it. So about a month ago, I started running regularly 3 or 4 times a week, and that's time consuming. I'm trying to,
Yes.
it's anywhere from 30 minutes to, as I get closer to running that half marathon, which is scheduled for October, we'll be
Good for
getting
you.
close to running, that's 2 hours on a Saturday
Yeah.
that's taken up for just that. And so, as I'm planning my days and the other things that I have ambitions to do, something had to go. And for me, this was the thing that I was ready to let go of. How about you?
Yeah, I've let go of a couple of things. As attorneys and writers and general A-type people, it's easy to fall prey to the I will just squeeze it in somehow. I can, micromanage my calendar so much. Particularly, I don't have young kids, so I don't have so many wild cards in my schedule. My kids are grown and gone. But even so, it is not appropriate or healthy to, well, you know what? I'll just throw in an extra half an hour after dinner every night because it's never half an hour. It's always an hour and a half. And that's just ridiculous. I um, had kind of a wake up call last year when with one of my first really big financial successes as a lawyer, I bought myself a really beautiful grand piano. It's not a baby grand, it is a grand piano. I bought it on consignment, but I stalked that thing for years, literally years, until the dealer finally called me and said, you know what? The people who owned it passed away and their children just want to unload it. And it was still a price that would give you a nosebleed. But nonetheless, I said, okay, now's the time. So I've had this beautiful instrument that I hadn't touched for 3 months. And I said, no, time for a change. I mean, I'm in my 70s. So if I don't do it now, when exactly am I going to do it? So that was one of the things. And then with my Guiding Emily series about the blind woman and the guide dog, I've done so much research among the blind and visually impaired community to get the details right, and always aware of the isolation that the visually impaired feel within the sighted community. And most recently, it's ever since the movie came out based upon Guiding Emily on Hallmark Channel, I'm even more aware of the staggering unemployment of visually impaired people within any community, but particularly the sighted community. Their unemployment rate of the people with visual impairments who are capable of and would like jobs, there's 800,000 people in the United States. That represents, of that 800,000, there is a 70% unemployment rate.
Wow.
I mean, that 70% represents 800,000 people. And I thought this is just crazy. Most of them who are working within American Council for the Blind or, some of the state agencies within their quotes industry.
Mm.
So I said, I got to change this. I can change this. I set myself a goal for this year to decrease that unemployment rate by 10%, which would be 80,000 jobs nationwide. How was I going to do that? No clue. But I decided, okay, I need to get in front of human resource professionals, and I've pitched a panel that I will moderate of visually impaired people doing jobs that are easy for them to do in with employers that are plentiful in whatever geographic area our panel is going to be in. Phoenix, plan to start in Phoenix at the end of August at the AZ SHRM convention. I hope I get approved for that. I think I will. So we've got a lot of big banks and insurance companies. So there'll be a couple of blind people doing those sort of computer-based jobs. I have a blind phlebotomist who is going to be my shock and awe panelist, two panelists that are sighted people who employ blind people, and then a final person who will talk about assistive technology available, tax credits for that, and the fact that the average cost to accommodate a blind person is $500, period, forever, not a month, not a year, ever.
Wow.
So I'm hoping, and in doing all that, this isn't, I have other people helping me. I'm reaching out and saying, hey, do you know somebody who? And people are happy to help me, but it is on me. And I'm talking to potential panelists and making sure that they can tell a story because I want my sighted audience to be moved. My goal is for people to come out of our breakout session and be talking about it in the hallway, at their next session, at lunch, at dinner. This needs to be a big deal. Oh, and I'm going to have a QR code or something that tells people, okay, here's where you go to get assistive technology. And most importantly, here's where you go to get a job bank, to access a bank of people who are looking for jobs. So all of that isn't the kind of stuff that can be fitted in the odd 15 or 20 minutes that you might have. I still want to keep writing. I am still writing. I don't intend to let that go, but I really, if I don't do anything else right, I need to get this panel right. I'm committed to it. So I said to myself, I need to cut back on something, and I've cut back. I'm a past president of Sisters in Crime, and I'm going to totally get myself out of that organization because I'm not a person who holds a boundary well. If somebody asks me to do something, I always hear myself saying yes. So knowing that about myself, I guess I just need to take myself out of that situation. All Marshall. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I mean, yeah, I think that knowing yourself and your own capacities, and knowing that, if you're, for you, if you're involved in something, then you're all in. It may be that in those situations, you just got to be all out so that you can have time for the new priority.
I think that's exactly right. And just because something once was really wonderful and was really a cherished goal or connection or whatever, doesn't mean that later on it isn't time to move into something else. So that rhythm of life stuff um, happens. But one of my basic, I don't, I could easily, I've got enough of, I've got 25 books now and three more coming out. I could say, okay, that's enough. I don't need to write. But you know what? I love writing.
Hmm.
I don't want to give that up. And I'm afraid to step away from that because there is a momentum build up with churning out books, and I've got dedicated readers, and am finally reaching some of the lofty income goals I set for myself when I started this. Um, and I think it's too hard to step off of that train and step back on and get it going again. So I'm not going to do
Yeah, for
that.
sure. I agree. Um, and I had I had another idea. I have so many books I want to write, and so little time to do it. And so, along with running and the family, and writing is the reason that we started this, is to be able to talk about writing.
Yeah.
But it has in part taken time away from the writing itself, and so I am ready to put that hour to 3 hours a week that this occupies
Mhm.
back into the writing. in the hopes that I can get those books out. I mean, I had another idea over the weekend that I just put in my story ideas spreadsheet and was like, just tuck it away. This may not be a standalone story. It may be just an idea for a part of another story. But as I was looking through that spreadsheet, I kept coming across things I'd even just forgotten that I'd written down. I was like, oh,
Sure.
that's a great idea. I love that idea.
Mhm.
How in the world am I going to have time to write it? And so for me, to be able to do that, I've got to sunset this to be able to focus on the writing itself rather than just talking about the writing that at the moment I haven't been able to get done. Um, but I've really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed talking with you every week. Um, Getting to know you, talking about writing, and certainly the conversations we've had off of outside of these window panes here too. Um, and for everybody who's listened, we truly appreciate that as well.
Absolutely. It's been just a joy to connect with people and with you. And we've promised each other that we will retain our friendship, and I know we will. I'm so glad that you have your spreadsheet to keep your wonderful, crazy spreadsheets. Yeah, because it's you don't want to let those go. And that 3 hours a week is not just the time, it's the energy drain that
Mm-hmm.
you can put into a different creative process that you need to keep that energy in your bank to pursue your writing. I think that's smart.
All right. Well, I think that'll be our farewell to the podcast.
I think that sounds good. I like